Hello, my name is Pete Brown. On behalf of the Elections Committee, I'd like to introduce you to one of our 4 candidates that are running for the Board of Directors. So it is my pleasure to introduce Tom Phillips.
Well, thank you.
Tom, welcome. Before we get into the prepared questions that the Elections Committee has done, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm a 27-year Air Force retiree. I also worked in industry for 10 years, working for a large defense contractor, working different things, integrating things on airplanes, boats, and all that kind of stuff. Traveled a lot, and then started my own LLC for consulting right now. So that's what I do right now, part-time. But otherwise, I'm staying at the lake now full-time.
Well, wonderful. Well, I'm glad you're stepped up to run for the board. It's people know it's a lot of work. I hope they understand how much work it is. But so let me kind of give you some of these questions that have been distributed to you, so you can tell us your thoughts on a lot of issues here at the lake.
Sure.
First of all, have you been involved in any committees or clubs and organizations here at the lake?
So I've been involved in the church, Lake of the Woods Church, and my wife was leading the Christmas box gathering every year, and we did that for about 6 years. We were part-timers until the pandemic hit. Then we moved down here for a little bit, but then I actually resigned from my position in industry and started living here a little bit more full-time. I never felt like I was able to provide the continuity that some of these boards or the committees needed, so I opted not to try to do that, plus my main job that I was doing at the time. But since then, I've actually been part of the ECC committee for almost a year now, so I've been doing that, and it's interesting because I built 2 homes here. So I've had to deal with the ECC in Orange County in the past on the 2 homes that I built, but it's different being on the other side of that committee as well. But I've always felt that the reason to be a part of that was to help the people do what they needed to do, not to stop them from doing certain things, but to try to help them execute what they felt they were trying to do, if it was within the regulations and everything. So it's been fun doing the ECC. I've gotten to meet a lot of the different people in the community here.
Very good, and that's very good experience building 2 homes yourself. Some of your management skills, you talked about your work, and tell me about that and some examples of types of things you did.
So I've been in a lot of different leadership positions throughout the Air Force. Obviously, I was a squadron commander. I was a ops O, so that's really taking care of the day-to-day ops type of stuff. I was also the lead test flight pilot, so I had to manage the maintenance guys when we were testing an airplane and everything. But at the I've been also at levels at both the Pentagon and ACC where I was standing up a new career field. And so you had to look at the entire planning. You have to start with a manning document and then start building the squadrons out from there. And I went around, and that was during the 9/11 timeframe during the war. And I stood up a career field of 166 combat rescue officers to be officers over top of all the pararescuemen in the Air Force. So the guys that do a lot of and I was a PJ early on. At my jobs on the commercial side in industry, I was running a team of 26 people. Again, building a budget and then having to do, I ran basically one of the funding lines for that company. So I did all the military sales for this large company called Fabrique Nationale. It's a Belgian company.
Well, so now you excited your experience with the ECC and getting to meet people. Just what kind of thoughts or plans would you have for getting opinions from our members as a board member?
Well, I think the way we've been doing it lately for the referendums has been a good way, reaching out both on social media and then reaching out in person and trying to at least communicate as clearly as possible what you're trying to do. I think some people get scared with the terms, and if you can't explain it in basic terms, it's really hard for people to kind of buy in. So I personally think the human touch is the best way to do it. You have to be able to talk personally with people and try to make them understand what you're trying to change.
Now, you mentioned social media. Obviously, there's a lot of several things here in the lake. The official Lake of the Woods page, of course, and then there's several others. Sometimes there's discourse, sometimes all things. What do you think are the opportunities that these things present? And you've already cited one, of course.
I have two feelings on social media. I'm not a participant in a lot of social media, other than LinkedIn, which is more of a professional. So if we had more of a professional where we would actually talk about the facts rather than feelings, I think social media is a great thing. But I do believe that some of the social media that I've been hearing about is more about emotions and personalities than it is about the content of what we're really talking about.
Very good observation. Fiduciary responsibility. Board members have a fiduciary responsibility to the association. Can you see any situation where the responsibilities there might conflict? Do you have any conflicts that might hamper your ability?
I'm not sure what you meant. So I read that question. I'm not sure what you meant by conflicts because, I mean, you're always going to have situations where you may not agree with something that you have to then actually execute, and then because there was a vote and everybody has to follow that vote.
Yes.
If you're talking about personally having a conflict with it and not being able to do the job, I don't think that's something that would happen to me.
It would be, for instance, if you still owned the business you talked about and actively, if a contract came up, you'd have to recuse yourself from.
Oh, I think that's first and foremost. I think there shouldn't be any conflicts if you're going to be on the board.
Exactly.
And it's pretty clear in the regulations that there shouldn't be any conflicts if you're on the board. But
I think that was the gist of that question, I suspect. Now, we have a lot of capital projects coming up in the lake. Some of them are underway, such as our stormwater management program. There's always something, our lake's health, or roadway maintenance, etc.
Right.
How would you see prioritizing these projects, and any suggestions on how we might get additional funding?
So, as a previous pararescueman, one of the things that they always taught us when we were a young PJ out in the field trying to treat someone who was injured, you treat the illness rather than the symptom. So I see a lot of times we're treating symptoms and not really the illness of our fiduciary issues here. So I think there needs to be more emphasis on the bedrock foundational issues that you need to fix. And to me, unless you're willing to fix those, you're always going to be trying to take care of a bleeding, someone cutting their wrist, or because those are symptoms of a deeper problem. So my view is, I think you have to be focused on the problems that that are kind of hidden sometimes, but they're the bigger problems. I.e., the amenities are losing money. How do you fix that? My view is that I think if you don't start with a valid requirement for the association, start with a requirement that you can actually put on a piece of paper or validate, and certify that is the requirement for all the people here. Because everything is in generalities in the covenants. It's not really specific. So unless you do that, how do you fix those other problems? Because those come from that.
Now, speaking of our covenants, we have our Lake of the Woods bylaws, covenants, rules, and regulations. Which of those is the most important, and why?
Well, I think it's the declaration, and then comes the actual. I'm trying to think of the second one. Articles of incorporation,
correct.
Then the bylaws, and then the regulations.
Yes, that's it. So, and of course now that's what we are involved in trying to change the covenants, the declaration/covenants for the referendum. Tell me a little bit about how you envision the role of the board of directors with the general manager.
Well, it's laid out in the regulation or in the bylaws that only the board president is actually kind of dealing directly with the general manager. I'm sure there's input from the board that goes to the board president, but that's how we're interrelated.
And you have obviously done your homework on the rules and regulations and the covenants, etc. That's good. That is good news. Now, we're also a non-stock corporation. Can you tell me about what that means and how does it impact our members?
So there's stocked and non-stocked. Non-stocked is basically where you're not getting an income off of the stock. It's not for trade. So basically, what a non-stocked is it's to help build a vision or to improve something. So it's a bunch of people getting together and building it around that to improve the environment, the community, the association.
Very good. Our reserve policy, that's the biggie here. All of the things that we have here after building this place for 50-some years have to be maintained. Can you kind of give us a thumbnail sketch of what that is, the reserve policy?
So the reserve policy is keeping money back for those expenditures that you may not foresee, something that breaks that you have to fix. So you need to have basically some money set aside so you can take care of those issues.
And so now changes or things that are coming out. This says the role of a leader is to be out front for change, not behind it. How would you rate our performance in that regard? And any suggestions you might have?
I think it's hard to actually kind of put until you know everything.
Yeah.
It's just like the term I used before for weapons school is that you don't know what you don't know yet. So there's a lot of things that I don't know until I get involved here. But I would say that I've been here 20 years. It's managed well, right? It's managed well. HOA fees are lower than my HOA fees down in Florida. And a lot of that has to do with flood insurance and everything, but still lower, much lower. I do believe that you can make things better. I still think there's opportunities to try to make things better. And I would focus on the underlying foundational issues that I think if we corrected some of those, we wouldn't have some of these other issues. Like, I think we should be building a 3-year budget plan. And then you only tweak it every year. But when I look at the process that we go through for a 1-year budget, I would do that once every 3 years and then tweak the yearly budgets based on the changes.
Very good. So, good thought. Budgets, obviously, revenue. Always, the board struggles with trying to keep the assessment reasonable, as you've mentioned,
right.
And but the need for funding things. Have you had any ideas about other sources of funding?
The problem is, since it's not for profit. I would have a lot if it was there. If there was an ability to be for profit, because there's things you could do. I just look at the number of people that cut down trees. You could actually have an entity within the community that could actually cut down trees for you and then pay, charge a certain amount. But I know that's not possible. The revenue side, I think, because you're almost capped out on buildable lots, and of course I see a lot of that in the ECC. I think the best thing we could possibly do is, I don't know that you can fix the revenue without increasing the HOA. I mean, I've been very vocal about that, and I think it has to be a shared responsibility. But I mean, there's probably other things we can do to try to raise money. But I know that I built 2 houses, and I paid a road fee for both of those.
Yeah.
So,
some of the other things to think about, you just mentioned, once you get there in the board, when you get on the board of directors, you mentioned earlier that the decisions are the decisions of the entire board, but it's
correct.
They may not always go your way. How do you see building enough camaraderie amongst your fellow board members if there's something you're passionate about, to try to get, you need at least 4 votes out of the 7 to get that to pass?
How would I go about it?
Yeah.
So my methodology throughout all my time is that you have to be honest with everybody, not just in the meeting, outside the meeting, with everybody. And as long as people trust you, you build the trust. I think between honesty and trust, you can do a lot. And I think people get to know who you are and where your ethics are. So, I mean, to me, those 3 things are important to build a team.
Very good. One of the biggest issues facing our restaurants, Fairways and the Clubhouse, and our association in general is labor and trying to hire and keep good people. Any thoughts on what we could do about labor challenges, which are not unique to Lake of the Woods, I
No,
suspect?
and I would tell you that in industry, we looked at a lot of different, variables, right? When we were looking at labor, hiring the right people is important. And sometimes if your salary is not where it needs to be, and they need to raise the salaries. But what I've seen so far here is that I'm not sure we know how many people we really need and where they need to be. And that's why I brought up at one of the meetings that we really need to do a manning document of some sort where we're looking at the requirements out there and knowing how many people, because I've heard it from a lot of people saying they don't have the resources to do everything. So until you do that kind of study and know what your requirements are, how do you balance that? I mean, there's always going to give and take on manpower, right? But you can't balance it unless you have a starting document, a baseline. And I just think it's important to do that. Then that helps you do your budget. So that would be my view.
There was one oddball question here I wanted to ask you. Who is your favorite leader? I don't know where that came from.
I don't know that I could pick one person, to be honest with you, as my favorite leader. I'm not sure that I could. I think someone who has consistent values, someone who, lives what they preach. I mean, those are all important qualities, but everybody has issues, right? Everybody's human. I mean, some of the people that I've respected the most are like Teddy Roosevelt. I always felt like he kind of marched to his own tune, never hid from anything, always, spoke his mind. So Teddy Roosevelt was probably, I think, he overcame so much too, based when he was young. So I probably Teddy Roosevelt.
Okay. Well, I don't know where that question came from, but anyway. So as we're about to wrap up here, let me do this. Give me your elevator speech on why someone should vote for you to be on our board of directors.
I think people should vote for me because I care about the people.
Mm-hmm.
I care about the people. I want the community to get better. I think we can. And I think with the tenacity that I have by standing up a career field that hasn't really been done that often in the Air Force, and doing the things that I've gone through, I think that I would be a good selection for this. And I'm trustworthy and I'm honest. So those are the reasons I think, and I have some good ideas.
Well, Tom, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. I'm going to wish you good luck.
Thank you.
And we'll see what happens in September.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.